What do you think born Muslims don't understand about being a revert?
How isolating it is. Um, I think it's really hard to conceptualize. Like, if you've always had a Muslim family, extended Muslim family, maybe going back generations, maybe your grandmother, great grandmother, and so on, were Muslim. Maybe you live in a Muslim country. I think it's very, very difficult to conceptualize how isolating it can be, and how difficult it can be to find entry and access into that. Um, and in some sense, reverts I feel are kind of treated as an anomaly, sometimes in a good way. But I always call it the baby panda at the zoo effect, where it's like, oh, let's crowd around. There's a baby panda that was just born at the zoo. And so there's a lot of oohing and awing in the beginning. And then there's not a lot of consistent, enduring support, right?
Mm.
It's just like, oh, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, like takbir, and then the crowd, you know, retreats and you're just sort of left in your home, and you're just kind of like, okay, I guess I have to like quickly find a way to personalize this and go, make a go of it on my own. So I think that's a difficulty. Yeah.
Yeah, after that initial like, oh, this is crazy. This new person's a trophy, right? They almost treat a revert like a trophy. But then they put
Hmm.
the trophy on the bookshelf and they walk past it every day and it no longer becomes unique.
Right.
What kind
Right.
of continued support do you think would have been helpful for
Well, I think one thing I noticed is, the same thing that people appreciated about me that led me to Islam, or at least led me to think more deeply about it and research it, was the same quality that they eventually found difficult to accept. And that was this deep probing curiosity and deep interest in the subject matter and like wanting to find all of these answers for myself. And so, some of those discoveries, or, I don't know, um, sometimes things that would come out of my mouth, they were like, what, where did you get this from? And a lot of times it would be this sort of like discrepancy between culture and religion. But I was like, I'm a I'm a truth seeker. I'm a spiritual seeker. That's what brought me here. So yeah, I'm going to continue doing that. Like, I'm going to continue to exercise that intellect and read as much as I can. And I don't know why it would irritate you, because that's what brought me here.
you?
And also, some of them will think like, oh, you're a bit weird. You don't seem to fit the mold. And I'm like, well, again, that non mold fitting is why I decided to embrace Islam. I wouldn't have had the bravery or the courage otherwise, you know.
Yeah, that's wise. I want Muslims to change how they view reverts from getting shahadas to getting practicing Muslims. We too often glorify the shahada and not glorify that this person's practicing. Alhamdulillah, so many people are becoming Muslim, but many of
Mm-hmm.
them never actually start really practicing. They believe Allah, right? They believe in the messenger. Maybe they pray like Jummah, they pray like
Mm-hmm.
maybe Fajr here and there, but they don't ever get fully practicing, right? We're all on our individual journey getting there. But I
Right.
think we as an ummah need to prioritize just as much on giving dawah, bringing people to Islam, making sure their foundation is built, right? You're
Yeah.
maybe number 100 of revert that I've had on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Every single person says the same thing. Every
Yeah.
revert is facing the exact same struggle, right? They don't have a
Mm-hmm.
proper way to build their foundation of learning their deen. There's not a proper support system. People are over critiquing them. They get isolated. They get treated like a trophy where people think it's amazing, but only to an extent to where it's like amazing for them, but maybe not amazing for the revert.
Yeah.
And we need, and there's a whole reason like this podcast now exists continuing. It's because people need
Mm-hmm.
to hear that. They need to hear the
Yeah.
right way to advise someone. If someone becomes a Muslim, the absolute worst thing you can do is tell them all the rules to follow. And it seems so
Yeah.
contradictory, right? Canyon, what
Yeah.
do you mean? You're saying don't follow rules? No, no, no. People know when they're sinning, they know when they're not, right? We need to
Right.
build their faith. We need to make them fall in love with Allah. That needs to be our priority.
Yeah. And I will say, like, you know, in Christian churches, they're actually really good at this. This is something that I've noted. There is that, like, if you join a Christian church, their fellowshipping is phenomenal typically, and they will really draw you in and sort of keep you in. And we don't really have that. We don't really have that mechanism of checking in, checking up, making sure you're, still feeling comfortable, you're still feeling embraced. And I'm not sure exactly why that is, but yeah, it's something that I've noticed is lacking. I mean, I will say that I've been pretty fortunate to receive a lot of support. The friend I mentioned earlier, Fadia, she actually, I want to say it was for the first month that I was Muslim, every prayer time she would call me on FaceTime
Wow.
and pray with me. And I'm like, that's the right thing to do, because she taught me prayer kind of step by step. And otherwise, I think I would have been really lost in that. So I had that really firm foundation. And I was invited to a lot of, revert groups and things at local masjids. Um, so, but I think, yeah, just kind of like thinking of reverts in your community and inviting them out as much as possible. And also just kind of checking in and making sure, like, especially with prayer, like, are you good with that? Do you need help? I can help you. I could pray with you. I think that would be
Hmm.
really helpful.
Yeah, most Muslims have no one who teaches them how to pray, and they don't want to ask because they don't want people to know they
Yeah.
don't know how to pray, right? So like, oh, I don't want to bring it up. I
Yeah.
would say when you
Sorry, go ahead.
mention where you think that problem comes from, why we glorify it, and I think it's because they don't understand how much you have to change your life when you revert, because they're born Muslim, right? They don't
Yeah,
know that it's a complete 180. We need to put just as much effort in, like, why are we so nice to the non-Muslim so they become Muslim, but then they become Muslim and they're like, that's haram. You can't do that. It's like, you weren't treating me that 5 minutes ago before I took my shahada. What changed?
exactly. That is exactly it. We treat non-Muslims better than new Muslims. Um, yeah, that's so true. And yeah, it's like, all these reverts are learning how to pray from YouTube, and it's like that's tough too, because it feels sort of robotic. Um, but it's also this huge identity shift. It's not just like you're changing your entire way of life, you're changing your way of thinking, but you're shifting your identity. And that's a lot. That can be very destabilizing when you are kind of questioning, like, who am I?